Some motorcycles do not retire. They get executed by spreadsheets, by emissions regulators, by corporate boardrooms full of people who have never once felt the wind trying to rip their helmet off at 80 miles per hour. Today, we are counting down 15 machines the industry killed, why they actually got the axe, and what you would pay today to rescue one from a used lot. Buckle up, because number one is going to hurt. Starting off strong at number 15, the Suzuki GSX-1300R Hayabusa, 1999 to 2018. Let us be very clear about what the Hayabusa was. It was not a motorcycle. It was a threat. A rolling, screaming, barely street-legal threat dressed in bodywork that looked like it was designed by someone who had watched too many SCI-5 films and not enough safety briefings. The engine was a liquid-cooled inline-4, displacing between 1,299 and 1,340 cubic centimeters, depending on which generation you caught. And the reason you caught it mattered, because catching one at full throttle was essentially impossible for anything else on public roads. 174 horsepower, 194 miles per hour. Those are the numbers that gave insurance companies nightmares and made the Hayabusa the gold standard of hyperbike bragging rights for nearly 2 decades. So why did they kill it in 2018? Euro 4 emissions regulations basically told Suzuki that the aging platform needed a complete overhaul to comply. Suzuki looked at the cost of rebuilding the engine and chassis architecture, then looked at their budget, then looked back at the cost, and quietly pulled the plug. The Gen 3 arrived in 2021 with ride-by-wire and advanced electronics. Suzuki gave it a software update and called it a new motorcycle. Classic. The Gen 3 replaced it, and many longtime owners will describe the original with aching simplicity. The Gen 1 was raw, the kind of bike that reminded you every single ride that physics is merciless. Used today, you are looking at $6,500 to $10,500. For what is essentially a street-legal missile launcher, that is a bargain. Imagine standing in front of a bike you want, the seller swearing it's perfect. That's where riders overpay by thousands on a $10,000 bike. Our buyer's kit tells you what it's really worth, your fair price, and when to walk away. A wrong bike costs thousands. This kit, just $49. The easiest money you'll ever save. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Let's get that bike you've always wanted for even cheaper. The Hayabusa was killed by paperwork. Our next bike was killed by something even more embarrassing for its manufacturer. An absolute legend lands at number 14, the Honda CBR 1100XX Super Blackbird, 1996 to 2007. Before the Hayabusa stole its crown, there was the Blackbird, and the Blackbird held a Guinness World Record as the fastest production motorcycle on the planet. Let that sit. A Honda held a world speed record. The brand most associated with sensible cars your dentist drives actually produced the outright fastest production bike on Earth, and it did it while also being comfortable enough for a touring weekend. 1,137 cubic centimeters of liquid-cooled inline-4 power, sitting inside a sport tourer chassis that could eat canyon roads and carry luggage. It was genuinely unfairly good at almost everything. The reason it died is simultaneously depressing and deeply predictable. Honda ran the numbers on updating the aging engine and chassis to meet Euro 3 standards and decided it was not worth the investment. Not that they could not do it, they just chose not to. Nothing direct replaced it, though the VFR-1200F indirectly inherited its sport tourer role. Many previous owners of this legendary bike never truly understood why Honda just let it die. For them, it probably was the best all-around motorcycle they ever owned, by a mile. Used today, a Blackbird runs $4,000 to $6,500. For a former world record holder, that is criminally undervalued. A record holder killed by budget decisions is genuinely sad, but our next bike was killed by something the entire industry knew was coming and still could not stop. Before we get there though, do us a quick favor and smash that like button right now. One tap, 0 effort, and it tells the algorithm to keep serving you exactly this kind of content. Next up at number 13, the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-14R 2006 to 2022. 200 horsepower from a street bike. That was the ZX-14R, and Kawasaki built it for people who felt the Hayabusa was too restrained. Those people existed. They still exist. They are terrifying, and we respect them completely. 1,441 cubic centimeters of liquid-cooled inline-4 that produce those 200 horsepower while maintaining enough civility to technically qualify as a sport tour. Technically. The quarter-mile times were the stuff of drag strip legend, and Kawasaki made absolutely no apologies for building something this excessive and calling it a road motorcycle. Euro 5 emissions regulations and a shrinking global appetite for massive hyperbikes finally ended it in 2022. Kawasaki replaced it with the supercharged Ninja H2SX, which is arguably more powerful and more ludicrous, so they did not exactly learn restraint. One owner described the ZX-14R as the most motorcycle I have ever sat on. I was genuinely scared of it for the first 3 months. Then I was addicted. Used today, you are looking at $8,000 to $13,500, a bargain for something that could legally embarrass a sports car. Kawasaki replaced excess with more excess. Our next machine was killed off for a reason that is almost philosophical. Pulling in at number 12, the Yamaha V-Max, 1985 to 2020, 35 years. The V-Max survived 35 years of production, multiple recessions, 3 generations of emissions regulations, and the rise and fall of an entire genre of muscle cruiser. And still, in the end, a spreadsheet got it. The engine was a liquid-cooled V4, already strange on paper in a cruiser, growing from 1,198 to 1,679 cubic centimeters over the decades, and every single cubic centimeter was absolutely intentional. The defining feature was the V-Boost system, a power valve arrangement that essentially ambushed the rider with additional torque at higher revs, turning an already rapid acceleration run into something profoundly stupid and deeply satisfying. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. From a cruiser, the high-revving V4 simply could not be recertified for tightening global emission standards without a complete redesign of the chassis. It had called home for 3.5 decades. Nothing replaced it. The V-Max ended as a singular, irreplaceable icon. No other cruiser architecture before or since has replicated its specific delivery. When production ended, Yamaha made no announcement about a spiritual successor. It simply stopped without ceremony and left a space in the market that remains unfilled. Used prices today sit at $7,000 to $12,000. A unique machine with a uniquely painful legacy. A machine that ended with no replacement is genuinely rare. Our next bike ended with a replacement, but the industry never quite forgave the swap. Honorably inducted at number 11, the Honda RC51, 2000 to 2006. The RC51 exists because Honda wanted to win the World Superbike Championship, and the rules demanded a V-twin. Honda does not do anything halfway, so they built arguably the most impressive V-twin superbike that has ever worn a production badge. 999 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled, 90-degree V-twin, producing 133 horsepower and delivering it with a brutality that made riders simultaneously grateful and nervous. It won. That is the short version of its racing story. It won the World Superbike Championship with Colin Edwards in 2002, which is the kind of result that justifies an entire development budget in a single season. The problem was that production costs were eye-watering, and by the mid-2000s, the market was rapidly moving toward lighter, cheaper-to-build inline-4 superbikes. Honda replaced it with the CBR 1000RR Fireblade, which was excellent but is, let us be honest, a completely different conversation. In 3 years of full world superbike competition, the RC51 accumulated 26 race victories and 30 additional podium finishes. Honda built it to satisfy a rulebook, won with it twice, then walked away from World Superbike entirely in 2003 once the rules changed to favor inline fours again. Used today, an RC51 runs $7,500 to $11,000. For a championship-winning machine, that remains a bargain. A racing icon killed by a ledger is a tragedy. Our next entry was killed by something even more preventable. Coming into position at number 10, the Yamaha YZF-R6, 1999 to 2020. The R6 was the kind of motorcycle that riding instructors used as a warning. 21 years of production, one legendary engine note, and an industry reputation that cast a long shadow over everything that dared compete with it. 599 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled inline-4, tuned to scream. Not rev, not spool. Scream all the way to a 16,000 RPM red line that sounded like the motorcycle was arguing with the laws of physics and winning. 117 horsepower from 600 cubic centimeters. Engineers literally lost sleep getting there, and riders lost sleep after experiencing it. Plummeting global sales for 600 cubic centimeter supersports and the enormous cost of making that high-revving engine meet Euro 5 emissions regulations made the math impossible. Yamaha pulled it from streets but kept it alive as a track-only bike, then released the YZF-R7 with a parallel twin for the road, which is fine, but it is not the same. Peak power arrived at 14,500 revolutions per minute. The red line sat at 16,000. Those numbers put it in the same rev range as purpose-built race engines of the same era. Yamaha achieved that on a machine that was also road legal, road taxed, and available at any dealership. Used today, $7,000 to $12,000. Worth every cent for that engine note alone. A legendary engine note silenced by regulators is heartbreaking. Our next motorcycle was killed by something far more personal. Roaring into the countdown at number 9, the Harley-Davidson V-Rod, 2001 to 2017. Harley-Davidson co-developed an engine with Porsche. Let that sentence settle for a moment. Porsche, the brand that makes sports cars for people who want to be seen arriving at restaurants. Harley took that collaboration, bolted a liquid-cooled 60-degree V-twin to a wide, low-drag bike chassis, and released it into a customer base that was deeply suspicious of anything that did not vibrate like a paint mixer. The Revolution engine displaced between 1,131 and 1,247 cubic centimeters across its lifespan, producing up to 122 horsepower, which was heresy for Harley at the time. Traditional Harley buyers hated the liquid cooling with a passion that bordered on personal. The wide 240mm rear tire chassis could not be cost-effectively adapted to meet changing global environmental laws and ABS requirements. Harley retired it, replacing the V-Rod indirectly with the Sportster S and its Revolution Max engine, which is genuinely excellent and which traditional buyers also complained about, because some things never change. Used today, $7,500 to $14,000. For a Porsche-Harley collaboration, that feels almost too affordable. An internally divisive machine meeting an inevitable end. Our next entry was killed by someone outside the company entirely. Cruising in confident at number 8, the Suzuki SV1000 2003 to 2007. The SV650 gets all the love. The SV1000 gets a moment of silence because it was everything the 650 promised, amplified, deepened, and delivered with a gear-driven cam whine that made it sound like a mechanical animal rather than a transportation appliance. 996 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled, 90-degree V-twin, with low-end torque you could feel in your chest before the tacho had moved 3 notches. The gear-driven cam whine was the defining trait. Engineers normally consider that noise a problem to be solved. SV1000 owners considered it a feature. They were right. It died from severe internal competition. The SV650 was wildly successful in selling to exactly the same buyer profile, making the 1000 financially awkward to maintain separately, especially with Euro 3 regulations, tightening the screws on the older architecture. Suzuki eventually replaced it with the GSX-S1000 series, an inline-4, which is spiritually a different machine entirely. The SV1000 was inarguably the best-kept secret in motorcycling. Keyword was. Used today, $3,500 to $5,500. Criminally cheap for a machine this characterful. Killed by its own little sibling. Dramatic. Our next bike was killed by an entire industry failing to support it. Triple-cylinder thunder arrives at number 7, the Triumph Daytona 675, 2006 to 2018. The Triumph Daytona 675 existed to prove that 3 cylinders were better than 4, and it made that argument aggressively with 126 horsepower, an engine note that sounded like nothing else on any grid anywhere. And handling that made experienced riders feel like they were quietly cheating. 675 cubic centimeters of inline triple, a configuration that delivered a power band sitting perfectly between the frantic spin of an inline 4 and the meaty shove of a twin. The intake wail was the thing. You could hear a Daytona 675 before you saw it, and you remembered the sound long after it left. The shrinking middleweight sport bike market made updating the 675 cubic centimeter triple engine to pass tightening global emissions a financial impossibility. Triumph replaced it with the limited-run Daytona Moto2 765 and later the street-oriented Daytona 660. Bereft devotees can probably still hear its glorious wail when they close their eyes. The most musical engine ever put in a production motorcycle, and now it is gone. Used today, $5,500 to $9,000. For the most distinctive sound in sport bike history, that is a steal. Quick pause before the top 6. Picture it, you buy the bike. It looked clean, it sounded great. 3 weeks later, the bills start, a worn chain, tired forks, a service the seller never mentioned. That's thousands gone on a bike you already paid full price for. Our inspection checklist catches every one of those before you pay, walking the bike like a mechanic. Spend $49 now or lose thousands later. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Don't let a hidden problem drain your wallet. The Daytona was unique in sound. Our next bike was unique in engineering in a way the industry still has not fully matched. Engineering madness enters at number 6. The Buell X B12R Firebolt, 2004 to 2010. Eric Buell was the kind of engineer who looked at a motorcycle chassis and thought, what if we also use this as a fuel tank and an oil reservoir? Most people would hear that idea and walk away slowly. Eric Buell built it, and the Firebolt was the result. 1,203 cubic centimeters, air and oil-cooled, 45-degree V-twin, borrowed from Harley's Sportster family but transformed by Buell's radical chassis philosophy into something the Sportster could never dream of being. Fuel in the frame, oil in the swing arm, a massive front brake rotor mounted to the wheel rim instead of behind it, reducing unsprung weight and improving braking geometry. Every engineering decision was deliberate, unconventional, and correct. Then Harley-Davidson, which owned Buell, decided during the late 2000s recession to shut down the entire brand. Not restructure it, not sell it, close it overnight. Eric Buell went on to form EBR independently, but nothing recaptured the Firebolt's specific brilliance at scale. Many bikers would argue that Harley killed the most innovative motorcycle brand in America to protect their cruiser sales. Many probably have never fully forgiven them. Used today, the price stands at $4,000 to $7,000. For engineering you literally cannot find anywhere else in production form. Brilliant engineering killed by corporate cowardice. Our next bike was killed by something nobody expected because it seemed genuinely indestructible. Unstoppable until it wasn't at number 5. The Kawasaki KLR R650, Generation 2, 2008 to 2018. The KLR 650 was the motorcycle equivalent of that truck with 300,000 miles on it that your uncle refuses to replace because it just keeps working. Bulletproof reputation. A 6.1-gallon fuel tank that laughed at range anxiety before range anxiety was even a phrase. 651 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled single-cylinder, essentially unchanged from the previous generation because Kawasaki had the correct philosophy of not fixing what is not broken. Adventure riders have crossed continents on these. Deserts, mountain passes, roads that do not appear on maps. The ancient 𝐏𝐿 CV-K40 carburetor, which was part of its legendary reliability, could not pass tightening US and global tailpipe emissions rules. A fuel-injected Generation 3 arrived in 2022, which is also excellent. But something purely mechanical and endlessly fixable disappeared in the translation. Used today, $3,500 to $5,500 for a machine that will outlast most of the vehicles it shares a road with. The most reliable bike on this list, killed by its own carburetor. Our next machine was killed by a level of ambition that was almost impossible to sustain. Italian drama drops in at number 4, the Ducati 1199, Panigale, 2012 to 2014, 2 years. The Ducati 1199 Panigale was so extreme that Ducati could only build it for 2 production years before replacing it with something even more extreme. That is either the most Ducati thing that has ever happened or a structural engineering cautionary tale. Possibly both. 1,198 cubic centimeters, liquid-cooled 90-degree 𝗕𝗏𝗏, the Super Quattro engine, which Ducati named as though it was a sports car and which performed as though it agreed. The revolutionary feature was the monocoque aluminum chassis, which eliminated the traditional frame entirely. The engine was a stressed structural member. The airbox was built into the chassis. The entire motorcycle was one unified, obsessively optimized object rather than a collection of components bolted together. 195 horsepower from 𝗕𝗏𝗏, extreme engine heat issues, and Ducati maxing out what was physically achievable with that large-bore 𝗕𝗏𝗏 architecture pushed them toward the 1299 Panigale and ultimately their flagship V4 platform. 2 years of production, and it is already a legend. Ducati accidentally created a unicorn. Used today, $11,000 to $16,000. The most expensive bike on this list, and for 2 years of production in a monocoque chassis, arguably the most justified price tag on it. Italian engineering reaching its own ceiling is genuinely humbling. Our next machine was killed by American pragmatism dressed up as progress. A silent workhorse bows out at number 3, the Suzuki DR-Z400 2000 to 2024. 24 years. The Suzuki DR-Z400 ran completely unchanged for 24 years, while the rest of the industry chased fuel injection, ride-by-wire, and electronic traction control. The DR-Z showed up to that conversation with a Mikuni carburetor, a bulletproof liquid-cooled single-cylinder, and absolutely zero interest in modernizing. 398 cubic centimeters of stripped-down, carbureted simplicity that mechanics could diagnose by ear and rebuild by hand in conditions where a laptop-dependent fuel system would have left you stranded. That Mikuni carburetor was both its greatest strength and its ultimate death sentence. Dual sport riders trusted the DR-Z precisely because there was nothing complicated to fail on a trail 50 miles from the nearest town. Suzuki sold it in 3 configurations: the Standard, the S with street-legal equipment, and the SM with supermoto wheels across its entire production run without meaningfully altering the engine architecture once. Modern tailpipe compliance laws, tightening aggressively through the early 2020s, made that carbureted platform impossible to certify for continued road sale, and Suzuki pulled the plug at the tail end of 2024. It was replaced by the fuel-injected DR-Z4S, which is cleaner, smoother, and easier to start in cold weather. It is also, to put it plainly, a fundamentally different machine wearing a familiar name. Used today, a DR-Z400 runs $3,000 to $5,000, depending on configuration and mileage, which means you can still buy 2 decades of proven reliability for less than the cost of a used car. A machine killed by its own simplicity, outlasting the regulations. Our next victim was killed the moment its replacement got cheaper to build. German efficiency gets dark at number 2, the BMW S1000XR, Generation 1, 2015 to 2019. BMW took the engine from their S1000RR superbike, detuned it slightly, stuffed it into an upright adventure touring chassis, and created a motorcycle that could genuinely embarrass sports cars at a track day and then carry your luggage home from a mountain pass the same afternoon. 999 cubic centimeters of liquid-cooled inline-4, detuned from superbike specification to merely extraordinary rather than apocalyptic. The standout spec was the origin of that engine. BMW essentially gave an adventure touring motorcycle a superbike heart and let it live a double life. Civilized in traffic, frightening when asked. BMW replaced it with a lighter, updated Generation 2 featuring a smoother engine counterbalancer and full Euro 5 compliance. The Generation 2 is better by objective measurement. The Generation 1 is more interesting by every other standard. Used today, $9,500 to $13,500 for a superbike motor wearing adventure touring clothes that feels like an entirely appropriate price for something this gloriously conflicted. Imagine walking into a viewing holding all the cards. You know the fair price, you know your opening offer, and you know the exact number where you walk away. That's how you knock hundreds, even thousands off the asking price. Our buyer's kit hands you those numbers for just $49. Negotiate from facts and never overpay again. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Right away, knowing you got the best deal. A machine retired for its successor's improvement. Our final entry was not retired. It was erased. The eulogy spot at number 1, the Victory Cross Country 2010 to 2017. Victory motorcycles did not close because their bikes were bad. They did not close because the market moved on. They did not close because of emissions regulations or development costs or a single model failing to find its audience. They closed because their parent company, Polaris, decided that Indian motorcycle was a better brand investment and liquidated the entire Victory lineup overnight. Every model, every dealer relationship, every future development program, gone. In 2017, 1,731 cubic centimeters, 106 cubic inches in the American measurement that Victory buyers preferred, air and oil-cooled 50-degree V-twin, a genuinely thunderous engine note packaged into a machine that had no reason to sound apologetic. The standout feature was the futuristic cast aluminum chassis paired with factory-fitted hardbag storage that made the Cross Country one of the most genuinely livable long-distance tourers ever built by an American brand. It looked like a concept bike that someone accidentally approved for production, and it rode like one too. Polaris pulled the entire brand to funnel capital toward Indian, which they had acquired in 2011. The Cross Country and every Victory model was replaced by the Indian Challenger and Indian Chieftain, which are excellent motorcycles built partly on foundations that Victory's engineers laid. One Victory owner spoke for an entire community with the kind of fury that only genuine grief produces. We were not discontinued, we were deleted. There is a difference and every Victory owner feels it. Used today, $7,000 to $12,000. For a machine whose brand no longer exists, that price tag carries a particular kind of weight. 15 motorcycles. 15 stories of emissions regulations, corporate decisions, plummeting sales, brilliant engineering that arrived too early, and at least one instance of a parent company performing a hostile takeover on its own subsidiary. Some were replaced by better machines, some were replaced by different machines, and some were replaced by nothing, because nothing else could fill the specific, irreplaceable space they occupied. Continue the ride and click on the next video. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like this video and get your bikes out and go out there.